The sound of a heart monitor beeping steadily filled the air. Jinwoo's eyes fluttered open, greeted by the sight of a hospital room's white ceiling. The last thing he remembered was barely escaping death in the double dungeon. Now, he was lying in a hospital bed, his body still sore from the ordeal. As he sat up, confusion clouded his mind. How had he survived? Why was he still alive after facing certain death? Before he could dwell on it for too long, the door creaked open. Two men in suits entered, their expressions serious. They introduced themselves as members of the Hunters Association's surveillance team. Their sudden visit only deepened Jinwoo's confusion. The men wasted no time getting to the point. They were here because of something unusual, something that rarely ever happened. They suspected Jinwoo had undergone a second awakening. A second awakening was an extremely rare phenomenon. A hunter who had already awakened once had an incredibly small chance of awakening again, gaining immense power in the process. But Jinwoo? He was known as the weakest hunter. A second awakening seemed impossible. Yet, he had miraculously survived a dungeon where even experienced hunters perished. The surveillance team needed answers. Jinwoo, however, had none to give. He wasn't sure what had happened either. All he remembered was the strange blue window that appeared before him in the dungeon. When he tried to explain, the association members looked skeptical. They left, telling him they would monitor his status closely. As soon as they left, Jinwoo sat in silence, his mind racing. That was when it happened again. A glowing blue window appeared in front of him, filled with words only he could see. There it was again, the strange interface. It hadn't been a hallucination. This system was real. But what did it want from him? Before he could figure it out, the door opened again. This time, it was someone familiar, his younger sister, Jinwoo. Relief flooded her face as she rushed to his side. "I told you to be careful." Jinwoo's voice was filled with worry. She had been terrified when she heard about the accident. After reassuring her that he was okay, Jinwoo finally left, allowing Jinwoo to have some peace. He turned his attention back to the strange window in front of him. It was still there, waiting for him to respond. As Jinwoo focused on the system, a new message popped up. Daily quest, the preparation to become stronger. 100 push-ups. 100 sit-ups. 100 squats. 10 kilometers run. This was like something out of a video game. But he was in no mood to play along. He had just survived a nightmare, why should he start doing push-ups now? With a tired sigh, he dismissed the quest and lay back down in bed, ignoring the strange instructions. He had no energy for this nonsense. Sleep was the only thing he wanted right now. But his rest didn't last long. Jinwoo's eyes shot open as the entire room began to shake violently. It felt like an earthquake, but something was off. His hospital room blurred, dissolving into something else entirely. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a vast, empty desert. The scorching sun beat down on him, and hot sand surrounded him in every direction. He wasn't in the hospital anymore. He doesn't know how he got here, but there's no time to think. Suddenly, the ground trembles. Something huge is coming. Then, a new notification appeared before his eyes. Penalty quest, survival begins now. Jinwoo's nightmare had just begun again. He looks back, and his heart drops. A massive creature with countless legs is charging toward him, kicking up sand with every step. Jinwoo doesn't hesitate. He turns and runs as fast as he can. His body is weak, his legs are slow, but he has no choice. If he stops, he's dead. Its huge jaws opened wide, ready to swallow him whole. Jinwoo's body moved on instinct, dodging just in time. Sweat dripped down his face, this was the hardest challenge he had ever faced. Then, just as he thought he couldn't last any longer, another message popped up, penalty quest completed. The nightmare was over. Jinwoo collapses onto the floor, gasping for air. His body is covered in sweat, his hands and feet coated in sand. A message appears before him, his penalty quest is finally over. Still catching his breath, he mutters, "Penalty quest." The whole experience was overwhelming, and he barely survived. Before he can process it all, another message pops up. This time, it's different. The system informs him that he has received a reward for completing the penalty quest. Two options appear: accept or decline. Jinwoo stares at the message, realizing that whatever the system is, it's not going to let him off easy. Outside the hospital, he ran through the park, pushing his body to its limit. Nurses inside the building noticed and whispered among themselves. "Look over there, he's running right now." It was unusual. A patient who had been on the brink of death was now running like an athlete. But Jinwoo had a reason. The mysterious system had given him daily quests. If he ignored them, he was thrown into a terrifying place filled with deadly creatures. Breathing heavily, he finished his final lap. Suddenly, a screen appeared before him. Jinwoo stared at it, sweat dripping from his forehead. "This screen I see in front of me is not an illusion." Jinwoo was exhausted, his body drenched in sweat as he gasped for air. His muscles burned from the endless exercises, but he pushed through. Firstly, he muttered, trying to catch his breath. He had no choice but to complete the system's daily quest. After what felt like an eternity, a notification appeared before his eyes. The glowing blue screen showed his progress: 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run, all checked off. "I can see it crystal clear, but nobody else can," Jinwoo thought, glancing around. Then, something unexpected happened. A brilliant light engulfed him, radiating energy. His body trembled as he felt a surge of power flowing through him. A strange sensation washed over him. Status recovery relieves any fatigue from exercising. His eyes widened in surprise. The heavy feeling in his body vanished instantly. The exhaustion weighing down my body is gone in an instant, he realized. This system really worked. Later, Jinwoo stepped out of the subway at Hapjeong Station. He looked around, his mind focused on one thing, the key in his hand. It's time to figure out what this is. Jinwoo looked at the glowing key in his hand. He checked the details. The description said it would open an instance dungeon at Hapjeong Station. Curious, Jinwoo held the key firmly. As soon as he did, the key sparked with golden light. Energy swirled around him, and a bright blue portal tore open in front of him. The moment he stepped inside, a familiar blue notification appeared in front of him. "You have entered an instance dungeon." Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. "An instance dungeon?" he muttered. "You cannot leave this dungeon unless you defeat the boss or use a teleportation stone." Jinwoo stared at the screen, taking in the situation. There was only one way out. He clenched his fists. "Seriously, I have to do this all alone, without a party?" His voice wavered slightly, but he knew there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. Each step echoed in the empty space. The deeper he went, the colder it got. The air felt heavy, pressing down on him. He could barely see ahead, but one thing was clear: something dangerous was waiting for him at the bottom. Please follow and subscribe for more of your favorite anime manhwa comics.